I thought they were harmless, just little things I could ignore. But after 70, those 5 small neglects became battles I wasn't prepared to fight. If I could go back, I'd listen to what my body was quietly trying to tell me. There's a strange comfort in thinking we have more time. When you're in your 50s or even your 60s, the body still forgives. It compensates. It hides what's breaking beneath the surface. You skip a dentist appointment and nothing terrible happens. You turn up the television volume a little higher and convince yourself the sound quality just isn't what it used to be. You stumble once or twice getting out of bed, but you laugh it off. These moments pass without consequence, so you assume they always will. But the body is patient in a way we often mistake for resilience. It doesn't shout warnings. It whispers, and when we don't listen, it keeps a record. Somewhere deep inside every skipped checkup, every ignored symptom, every dismissed discomfort gets written down. The bill doesn't come due immediately. It waits. And when it finally arrives, usually sometime after 70, it arrives all at once. I learned this the hard way. Looking back now, I can trace so much of what I'm dealing with today to decisions I made or didn't make 20 or 30 years ago. Small decisions, quiet neglects, things I genuinely didn't think mattered. I told myself I was too busy. I told myself it wasn't serious. I told myself I'd deal with it later, and later became now. The truth is, I didn't care enough when it would have made the biggest difference. I wish I had. The first thing I stopped caring about was my teeth. It seemed so minor at the time. I brushed twice a day mostly. I flossed when I remembered, which wasn't often, and I went to the dentist only when something hurt. For years, that approach seemed fine. My teeth looked okay. They worked. I could chew, I could smile, and nothing was falling apart. So when the hygienist suggested I come in every 6 months for cleanings, I nodded politely and then didn't go back for 2 years. What I didn't realize was that gum disease doesn't announce itself. It creeps in quietly, almost politely. A little bleeding when you brush. A slight tenderness that comes and goes. Nothing that stops your day or demands urgent attention. So you ignore it, and it grows. By the time I was in my early 70s, I had lost 2 molars, not from cavities, from bone loss. The infection had been there for years, silently eating away at the foundation that held my teeth in place. Losing those teeth changed more than my smile. It changed how I ate. Suddenly, foods I loved became difficult or painful. Corn on the cob, apples, anything with a good crust. All of it required caution or was off the table entirely. Meals with family became something I approached with quiet anxiety instead of joy. I stopped laughing openly because I was self-conscious. I avoided certain social situations because I didn't want to explain why I wasn't eating what everyone else was enjoying. But the physical inconvenience was only part of it. What really hurt was the realization that this didn't have to happen. If I'd cared enough to go to those cleanings, to address the gum inflammation when it was still manageable, I could have kept those teeth. I could have kept the ease and dignity that comes with a healthy mouth. Instead, I'm managing the consequences of decisions I made decades ago, when my teeth still felt invincible. The second thing I let slide was my hearing. I first noticed it in my late 50s. Conversations in noisy rooms became harder to follow. I had to ask people to repeat themselves more often. The television got louder, bit by bit, year by year. But I convinced myself this was just normal aging. Everyone's hearing gets a little worse, right? So I didn't do anything about it. What I didn't understand then was how much hearing loss isolates you. It's not just about missing words, it's about missing connections. When you can't hear clearly, you start to pull back from conversations. You nod and smile even when you didn't catch what was said. Because asking someone to repeat themselves for the third time feels embarrassing. You stop going to gatherings where there's background noise because you know you won't be able to participate. Slowly, without even realizing it, you become a spectator in your own life. By the time I hit 70, my hearing had deteriorated to the point where my family was frustrated with me. My grandchildren thought I was ignoring them. My spouse was exhausted from repeating everything. I felt like a burden. And worse, I felt lonely. I was surrounded by people I loved, but I couldn't fully hear them. I couldn't catch the jokes, the nuances, the quiet moments that make relationships rich. I was there, but I wasn't really present. When I finally got hearing aids, it helped. But it didn't erase the years I'd already lost. It didn't undo the distance that had grown between me and the people I cared about. And I couldn't stop thinking about how different things might have been if I'd taken it seriously earlier. If I'd gone to an audiologist at the first sign of trouble. If I'd admitted that my hearing mattered more than my pride. The third neglect was balance. It's something you don't think about until you lose it. For years, I noticed little things. A slight unsteadiness when I stood up too quickly. A moment of dizziness after bending down. A need to hold on to the railing more often. But I brushed it off as just getting older. I didn't connect the dots. I didn't think of it as something that required attention. Then, one afternoon in my early 70s, I fell. It wasn't dramatic. I was getting out of the bathtub and my foot slipped. I reached for the towel bar, but it wasn't enough. I went down hard, hitting my hip against the edge of the tub. The pain was immediate and intense. I lay there for a moment, stunned, wondering if I'd broken something. I hadn't, thankfully, but the fall shook me in a way that went deeper than the bruise. After that, everything changed. I became afraid of stairs, afraid of wet floors, afraid of walking on uneven ground. I started limiting where I went and what I did, not because I physically couldn't, but because I didn't trust my body anymore. That fall stole something from me, a sense of confidence and freedom I hadn't even realized I valued until it was gone. What I wish I'd known is that balance is something you can protect. Strength training, flexibility exercises, even just paying attention to how you move, all of it matters. But I didn't care enough to do any of that. I assumed my body would just keep working the way it always had. And when it didn't, I was left picking up the pieces of a fall that might never have happened. The fourth thing I ignored was sleep. For as long as I can remember, I was a poor sleeper. I'd lie awake for hours, mind racing. I'd wake up multiple times during the night and struggle to fall back asleep. In the mornings, I felt tired, but I pushed through. I drank coffee. I told myself I'd catch up on the weekend. I never did. I didn't realize that chronic poor sleep was doing more than just making me groggy. It was affecting my memory, my mood, and my ability to think clearly. It was weakening my immune system and increasing my risk for all kinds of health problems. But because the effects were gradual, I didn't connect them to my sleep. I just thought I was getting older and slowing down. By my 70s, the exhaustion had become a constant companion. I couldn't remember names or where I'd put things. I felt irritable and short-tempered, which wasn't like me. I got sick more often and took longer to recover, and I felt a deep, bone-level fatigue that no amount of rest seemed to touch. When I finally mentioned it to my doctor, She asked about my sleep. That's when I realized I'd been ignoring a problem for decades. Sleep apnea, it turned out. Treatable, manageable, but only if you acknowledge it. I started using a CPAP machine, and slowly things improved. But I can't help but think about all those years I spent running on empty, all the moments I was too tired to fully enjoy, all the sharpness and energy I lost because I didn't think sleep mattered enough to fix. The fifth neglect was the hardest to admit. Loneliness. After my spouse passed, I told myself I was fine. I had my routines. I had my home. I didn't need to burden anyone with my sadness. So I didn't reach out. I didn't accept invitations. I convinced myself that being alone was just part of this stage of life, something to endure quietly. But loneliness is not the same as solitude. Solitude can be peaceful. Loneliness is a slow ache that never quite goes away. It sits with you at breakfast. It follows you through the day. It grows heavier in the evenings when the house is too quiet and the phone doesn't ring. And over a time it starts to affect everything: your mood, your health, your will to keep going. I didn't realize how deeply it was hurting me until a neighbor knocked on my door one afternoon just to check in. We talked for maybe 20 minutes, and when she left, I cried. Not because I was sad, but because I'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen, to matter to someone. That conversation reminded me that connection isn't a luxury. It's as essential as food or sleep, and I'd been starving myself. Looking back, I see now what I couldn't see then. These 5 neglects: my teeth, my hearing, my balance, my sleep, my loneliness. They all felt separate at the time, but they were connected. Each one made the others worse. Each one quietly eroded my quality of life, and each one could have been prevented, or at least softened, if I'd cared enough to act. But here's the truth I've come to understand. It's not too late. Even now, even after everything, there are still choices I can make. I can't undo the past, but I can refuse to repeat it. I can schedule that dentist appointment. I can wear my hearing aids without shame. I can do balance exercises in my living room. I can prioritize sleep, and I can reach out even when it feels hard. Caring for yourself isn't vanity. It's not a weakness. It's the most dignified thing you can do, because the body you have right now is the only one you'll ever get, and it deserves your attention, your respect, and your care. Not someday, today.